Sam, so I wanted to start off with the photography journey for you. I believe you were a chef before you became a photographer. So can you tell us a little bit about your experience and how you became a wedding photographer?
Oh, definitely. So I will just go in a brief addend or like a brief summary of I was a chef for a little while. It was like a childhood dream of mine. Food Network had just come out like in 1996 or something on cable, and I was instantly hooked. And I got into that industry, and it was a lot more taxing, and it just wasn't what I was expecting as a creative. And I felt like I failed my childhood self because it had been a dream I've had since for 12 years. And so I was in such kind of a dark place. It felt like I had broken up with the dream I had. And my friend had just been posting photos on Facebook and Flickr about a camera that he bought. And he'd just been posting photos with a DSLR. And I was like, I'm just gonna go buy a camera. I bought a Nikon D90 and was like, sure, I'll just do this. And I kind of fell in love with it. I had no artistic in inkling beforehand. I mean, the closest I'd probably come to was through sushi, which was the kind of chef I was. And I learned about minimalism and like plating and just like colors and aesthetics. So I really felt like me failing as a chef helped me continue my journey on being a wedding photographer. And I just, I don't know, I was just so young, and there's so many things when you just don't care when you're young and you just are so excited and enthusiastic. And so when you get that way as a photographer, I remember that, and I remember those feelings. And anyone that I've talked to at that stage, I'm like, just enjoy this process because like it goes away, that enthusiasm, especially when it becomes work, right? And I just saw a couple things on Craigslist, and honestly, I reached out to wedding photographers in the area and offered to take them out for lunch. And I owe Caroline from Caroline's Collective like the biggest like thank you of my life because she took a chance on me. She saw that I was actually really hungry for to be in this industry. I might have not been a very talented, or I was not a very talented photographer at all, but she saw that I was willing to put in the effort, and I really am grateful for her giving me that chance. So, yeah, just honestly reached out in my local community and was like, cool, weddings sound
Wow,
interesting. So, yeah.
awesome. So what kind of year was this when you first started?
So I probably quit being a chef in like 2010, and I started wedding photography or just joined photography. Like me starting wedding photography and photography was very similar in 2011, like around the same time. Like I was probably very reckless in doing that, but hey, that's the way it is, right?
And then what were the
But
first few years like as a wedding photographer there?
so I hit the ground really running. Like I remember the first year, I think I was at like probably like 40 weddings, like
Mm.
assisting or for my own. Like I really worked hard. And honestly, that really kind of screwed up my psyche because I became a jack of all trades. Like I was assisting a lot of different people with a lot of different visions. So my mind had become incredibly cloudy. Like I didn't know what I wanted, which is going to be a key into my therapy is I don't know what anything about me, my personal wants. But so that was a huge struggle. And I'm a complete late bloomer in this industry, I would say, since, I started in 2011. And honestly, I was just going everywhere. And I think this has nothing to do with my partner. I fell in love with I'm in a long distance relationship marriage with a wedding photographer, maybe former wedding photographer. She's phasing out, but her name is Brittany Esther. And she just seems so sure-footed about herself. She probably won't say that. She thinks she'll say I'm an idiot, but she knew what she wanted. And I think being in her shadow really was I mean, it's my own fault. It was my own like projection. She never projected anything on that. But I think living under her and her brilliance in a way, I just was like so clouded and didn't know what it was like being me. I was like, she's successful. I'm going to try to emulate her. I'm going to try to do everything like her, but I can't. Especially like our minds think so differently. And once I became comfortable with myself later on, it I got to know me.
Mm.
And I will tell you, in like 2018 was probably like my worst year in like the business, and I was just very lost. I remember driving to Marfa in October. It's like an 8 hour drive from Austin, and it's just you get a lot of time. I love those long drives because I'm just listening to music and I actually get to think about myself. And I just remember just feeling like, what are you doing with your life? Why? What's the point of this? I just felt like rock bottom. Things weren't. Wasn't bucking, and I, in a way, just felt like I was blaming everyone else but myself. But then after I gave it a lot of thought, I was like, you need to hold yourself accountable. Like, this is not the world's fault. This is your fault. I don't like, and so my wife convinced me to get a journal. It's called a Passion Planner. And it has this little exercise at the beginning of it where you write down your goals for 3 months, 1 year, 5 years. And let me tell you, I was mind blown because my wife would always be like, so what do you envision your life to be in 5 years and 1 year? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just trying to survive. I'm trying to run a business. I'm trying to keep things afloat. I'm trying to like fight all these fires. I never thought about the future. Where in her mind, she's like always planning for these next steps. Like she's so meticulous and thoughtful. And I'm just like running around with a chicken on my head, or like a chicken without its head. So that passion planner really helped me in 2019 to like get a little bit of focus and like figure things out. And then obviously the pandemic happened and every service industry or everybody in the world kind of shut down, right?
Mm.
And obviously one of the fears was like, I was like, I'm in this upward trajectory. I am booking, I'm doing well, like, and then it all stops. And that was a worry. Well, like, will everything go back? So honestly, I'm one of those kind of freaks that flourished during the pandemic because it allowed me to slow down and take time for myself. And I lost like 40 pounds during the pandemic just from essentially walking. So
Wow.
I was very grateful for that.
Wow. So, before we go into the pandemic and the changes that happened there, because I definitely want to dive into that. For any photographers who are maybe in a similar position where they're just starting out, maybe they're working with loads of different photographers and they're not clear on their vision, because it sounds like when you got clear on your vision, you had a bit more direction. You start creating goals with the passion planner,
Yeah.
things that was helpful to you. So what would you say to somebody out there who maybe is a bit unsure about the future and how something like that can help them?
I think it's very hard. Like, it's so hard nowadays, especially with social media, and you just get bombarded with like beautiful images, beautiful stills, beautiful lives out there. And it just, you obviously compare yourselves to that. Why aren't I creating that work? But I think when you realize that like the beauty of humans is just being yourself, just feeling so comfortable and creating work that only you can create and having a point of view that you can see, like your self value in that. Like, I know it's so hokey, but like to believe in yourself and to believe in what you do is like so beautiful. Like, why do you want to? You think Michael Jordan was trying to be like another player? No, he's trying to be himself. Like, only you can create the work that you want to. Like, if they're trying to go create like Sam Blake's photos, they're gonna hire her, right? Like, I don't know, just like I listen. There's this Jerry Saltz podcast, or there's this David Chang podcast, and Jerry Saltz was on it. And Jerry Saltz is such an interesting individual because he's a truck driver till he was 40. And then he just started becoming an art critic. He knew nothing about it, but he just decided to write and he's won like I think a Pulitzer, I forget, but like he like you yourself have a vision. There's something in you and you have to do that. I know this is so hokey, but like once you believe in yourself and your own point of view, it will all kind of come out. Be
Totally. Okay.
yourself.
And so you found, this planner, and it helped you carve out your future, or at least up until the pandemic happened, because
Yeah.
obviously things, you said you were on an upward trajectory, business was going great. Can you set the scene of what life was like for you at the start of the pandemic, and then ultimately what led you to seek out a therapist?
Perfect. So like I'm very lucky because I spent my time between Austin and Canmore, which is outside of Banff. And I remember it was like the end of February, beginning of March, and I was actually heading down to Austin for my spring season. And like things were like, obviously I kept up with the news with China and Italy, and it's slowly migrating westward. And I was like, I don't know whether to not to get on a plane or not, because I didn't know whether weddings were going to happen or not. And going through that border, it would be tough when things are locked down, right? So do I risk going to America and then not being there with my wife, but weddings are not happening, so am I just stuck in Austin? But I remember writing a planner like the week of and being like, "Hey, is this wedding still happening?" She's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, it is." And then South by Southwest closed, and then she wrote me back. She's like, "Nope, things are being postponed until April," and that wedding actually got postponed till I believe October 2021. But yeah, it was, since I'm in a long distance marriage, the pandemic was probably the longest time I've spent with my partner, which is kind of funny. And I am eternally lucky that I got to spend it like out in the outdoors, living in the mountains in Banff. Like I remember being so directionless because it's like, what do I do to fill my time? And I was like, hey, I'm gonna make sure I fill up my rings every day, like my Apple Watch rings. I'm gonna make sure I get these steps. I'm gonna make sure like I kind of focus on my health because I got to do something, right. And the dog has to go for a walk every now and then. So it's like that's what I just put all my energy into, was just moving. And I never intended to lose this weight. It just like happened.
Hmm.
And so fast forward, Texas opened up in fall of 2020. So I'm like shooting weddings, just kind of hoping I still kind of got it, just maintaining like, okay, cool. These weddings are happening. And in early 2021, I had like, I'd say let's just say a mini small panic attack where I was just breathing super heavy and I just couldn't move, and I just like kind of collapsed at home. I think it was just due to stress, anxiety, and I just didn't think things in my life were sustainable at that point. So I was like, I need to go seek professional help with this. And so I knew my photographer friend had been seeing a therapist, and I was like, well, can you share her information with me? And I followed up with a few therapists that were given to me from friends, and I saw this one, their website I just really liked, and she seemed very warm and inviting. And I just wrote to her if she had any availability, and she's like, yeah, can you meet me next week? And I was like, sure.
Wow.
And the only other experience with therapy I've had before was my partner suggested we do premarital counseling before we got married, just to like make sure we're on the same page. And
Hmm.
it's it's kind of funny because the way she framed it was like, hey, you have to get a driver's license before you learn how to drive right. Like we aren't giving the tools to really be in relationships. So like we should go seek this out. I'm like, yeah, that totally makes sense. And like I don't think we're given enough tools as adults in life to navigate the world, especially the way it is. So like going to therapy, like having someone to talk to is fantastic. But go on. I'm going to let you
Amazing.
segue through.
Amazing, Sam. Thanks for sharing that. And yeah, well, big up to Brittany for making that suggestion, because it's true. As adults, yeah, we're not given as many of the tools. There are resources out there, but sometimes we need somebody to make a move or give us some direction, and then life can become easier. So you mentioned with finding this therapist, you reached out to a friend, which I love that you did. Like, just speaking to other friends, and people being open about it as well, I think is really key, because then it doesn't feel like you're alone, or you're doing something that isn't uh quote unquote like normal. But
Yeah.
these conversations help normalize it. And it's so I know so many friends who speak to a therapist, have a therapist. I would say that I have in my life friends, and friends who are therapists or coaches in other areas, who can coach and guide me as well, which is super important. I feel like you had this connection, and it worked. And you mentioned the energy of the therapist, and what would you say to somebody who was looking for someone? I know it was the first person that you met was just like you felt that connection immediately, but how important is that in a relationship with a therapist?
I think for me extremely important for a therapist. And it's so funny because I consider myself a fairly open book, but like I would say it took like a full year, 12 sessions for me to actually feel open, like actually be vulnerable, like extremely, completely vulnerable. Because like you're still putting your best like foot forward with the therapist. You're still like, it's like I'm broken, but I'm not that broken, right? But like being vulnerable is what's going to help you grow, and acknowledging your faults and what is needs to be repaired or acknowledged, or even just not even repaired, even just like a side of you that you love, that you need to love, that you get to love is like so important. And so feeling you're able to feel vulnerable and not put your best foot forward with your therapist is extremely important. And I love Julie. Shout outs to Julie. She doesn't let me. Can we curse on this at any chance or not? I don't know.
Yeah, you can.
She she will not put up with bullshit. She will call me out on it. She will be honest with me. She's like, no, 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 you no, that's wrong. She won't let me just get away with it because she like you said, she is kind of like a life coach to me. She wants what's best with for me, right? Like, and I could not want a better relationship than that, right? She's not there for a paycheck or just to listen to me rant.
Sure. So as you went through this relationship and connecting with this therapist on a regular basis, how did you know that that was the answer or the solution that you were looking for?
It's it's hard because like therapy isn't like, hey, I'm gonna fix this one issue and then it will directly correlate to this thing. It it's so funny because I didn't expect to go to her to talk about my family. Like I went to her, was like, hey, I'm dealing with anxiety and stress with my work, and next year is going to be bonkers because in 2022 it's like completing the last postponements plus new bookings, so it was going to be stacked. So I was like, okay, cool, I'm going to make sure that I'm better equipped to handle stress for the future because that year's going to be crazy. And then obviously your childhood, your parents, I'm not throwing anyone on the bus, so don't think that, but like that it affects you as a human because it is just your point of view, it is your growth, and understanding why you are the way you are and like what your faults are is nice. But my therapist is like, cool, you know what these things are, what are you going to do about it? She doesn't care about that backstory. She's like, okay, you know that's happening, but what are you going to do? What are you going to change? And so I found out that I have extreme issues with boundaries, which is not, I have very porous boundaries, which is not good for running a small business because that doesn't turn off, right? That is so hard for me to turn that off because I pride myself on such customer service and just communication issues with I'm not assertive enough, and which hurts me in my relationships with people and with my partner. So finding those things out and being a healthier person in those regards help trickle out to, I would say, to the rest of your life.
Wow. So in business, you mentioned assertiveness, creating boundaries. What are some of the practical things that you can share that have really changed the game for you?
So I am a notorious inbox zero person. Like I pride myself on not having that badge on my email. And so having set office hours on when to respond to emails has definitely helped. Like I was responding to emails at like 1 a.m. because I'm a night owl and I'm like, people are gonna think I'm crazy, but like, or just I'm a night owl, or what, when does this guy sleep? But I had to let that go for my own sanity. And when you get so that was sustainable when your inbox is like okay, but when things are firing off, you're getting inquiries, you're getting a lot of emails from your clients, and obviously those would go ahead. But like it becomes overwhelming and you only have so much bandwidth. So I had to create a barrier where I'm like, I'm only checking my mail at the morning, maybe the afternoon, and maybe at night. I can't sustain checking it every hour and getting back to people immediately unless there's something important. And I think setting boundaries on like chat, on like Instagram chat with those inquiries and just being like, hey, can you respond to my email? Just making sure that things are kind of in one place, not allowing my clients to text me, being like, hey, can you remind you just to send it to an email, I'll get to you when you can. Because when they text me, I'd have so much pressure. especially like, oh, they seen that I've read this email, I have to respond back, and it's like, why do I need to do this to myself? Like, I'm a business as well as a person, but like I can put down this wall and guard to keep my sanity and not feel like I have to be on call at all times.
Thanks for sharing that, Sam. With challenges that come up, maybe new challenges or something that you haven't experienced before, how do you navigate that, and how do you prepare for your meetings with your therapist?
So it's funny, like I really look forward to talking to my therapist. Like I'm like, okay, like there's only one meeting I missed, and it's because stuff was going crazy or wild in my life. But like I would say the thing that she really taught me was to really start writing my thoughts down and journal again. Like that stopped essentially in 2020 when the world shut down, and I was like, I don't need a journal. I just left that habit behind. But she's like, you really need to listen to yourself and to really write down your thoughts and to know what you want. So she really got me started on kind of like making sure I journal. And I'm trying to do a better habit of it every day. I probably do it like once a week, if that. But I would say like it's a mirror into your subconscious, right? Like journaling. Like I don't know what I'm gonna write down. I when I get to the computer, I just get to the Word document and I'm like, let me just write what's on top of my mind, and things just flow out, and it's quite amazing to see like what is actually in your brain that you don't know is there.
Hmm.
So that is the way I prep, is just like write it out, journal, and then see if there's anything on my mind. And it really does feel like I'm talking to a friend, like an objective friend who doesn't feel like the societal norms of having to be nice. Like she will call me out on things and will give me advice when I can. So yeah.
Awesome, awesome, Sam. So when you're in front of your like doc, you do this at a computer screen. I'm more like pen to pad, but there's various ways in which one can journal. How do you how do you kick off, and how do you continue? Like, I'm just curious, if somebody has never journaled before, it can be looking at that blinking cursor and there's nothing coming out, but you know that there's stuff within you. How does one like get the momentum going? How do you get that momentum going?
So as a millennial, I was on a live journal or Zanga-esque blogging service. And so I am quite familiar with that kind of format. So I really just say what I just really start with what's kind of going in my life right now. Like I kind of did this, I kind of did this, I'm feeling like this. And like it just flows from that. It is just this weird prompt of just like, let me just talk about what's going on. And then in a very boring tone, and let me just put it out there. But I know you do bullet journaling, and I haven't done the research on that, and I was wondering if you can enlighten me on like what that process is like, because it looks eloquent.
My journaling practice has very much changed over the years, and now journaling for me is I did use bullet journaling for more of an organizational tool, like way back when. But now I use a planner called My Goals, migoals.com is where you can find that. But my journaling practice is something completely different, where I have just a book, lined and very, very plain. And it's just simple. And I just begin to just start writing whatever it is that is on my mind in the morning. And I find like the morning the best time for me to do this. So I typically do my morning routine, my practices. And then it's just pen to pad. And I just find that a lot of thoughts that sometimes come out for me during my practices, during yoga, during meditation, I can then kind of capture, because they're the things that are bubbling up underneath the surface for me. And sometimes they're really great creative ideas. Sometimes they're stresses or anxieties that I may have right now. And then I find the journal the best way to capture those things and to flesh them out. So that's actually my journaling practice. Bullet journaling is great. I know a lot of friends who do that, but I found it more of an organizational tool and not necessarily something that I wanted to use for my mental health, where I wanted to clear my mind, capture thoughts, capture ideas, flesh things out, and release and let go of things that were on my mind. So that's kind of how I journal right now.
It's it's just wild that we aren't taught this growing up. Like, maybe some people are, but like as a whole, like how much expressing yourself or continue to expressing yourself can just help your mental health and figure out what you actually want and what your goals are. I just feel like a lot of us are just keep going in the progress of life and just trying to keep up.
Totally. And so you've mentioned a few times, what you want and where you want to go in life, having this vision. So how key is that in knowing your direction and what you want for the future as it relates to your mental health?
I think it is an immense like unless you're extremely talented where people are going to notice you. I think setting up where you want to go, the steps to get there is imperative because how do you expect to get there other than just luck at that point, right? So, say for a business, I was like, hey, what do I want to do? How am I going to get more inquiries, right? I'm like, I'm going to Instagram 3 to 4 times a week and keep that train going, make that a habit. And like, I know their social media is inherently there's a lot of baggage with that. And I told myself, I was like, I'm not going to care about what the likes I get. And I'm going to post what I want, how I feel. Like, I don't plan my Instagram posts. I realized I am such a feeler and I just need to embrace it. I can never be that intellectual who pre plans everything. I work so well with just adaptation and the way I'm feeling. And I'm just like, that is the genuine, unique me. So I'm just going to post when I can, what I want. And so that was one example. And I get a lot of my inquiries when I focused on Instagram. So I think that if there are things in your business that you really love and that you really want to focus on, be sure to map that out and put all your energy into that. Like people love SEO. Like Hugh and his partner he did fantastic with this transition because he focused on SEO and that worked for him, right? So play to your strengths is so important. Don't do the things that are boring to you in business.
Nice. How do you feel speaking to a therapist, focusing on your mental health? You mentioned exercise, journaling, things like that. How has that affected your creativity?
I I think like there is a point when I noticed in 2021, I was like posting weird things on Instagram and things were getting like traction because I'm like, oh, the people are, and again, I shouldn't pay attention to likes, but I was like, oh, that's kind of neat. And I think I noticed like one of my best friends, I call him like my work wife, he was like, you seem very different. Like you just seem more confident in yourself. Like I hadn't really been talking to him. He just seen my posts, like just my pictures. And I just felt very sure-footed. I think sure-footed is like the word I describe kind of that transition was like the confidence in myself. Like I was like, oh, people actually like this weird stuff that I'm posting. I'm gonna keep doing it because it is what I love to capture at weddings is like these weird, unique, kind of just a little danky moments. I don't know. It's just like imperfect. It's like wabi sabi, right? It's just like these little messiness. I love that. And so I just kind of just like was like, you know what? I only have one life to live. I'm not gonna live trying to be what the industry is makes me or what perceives as like beautiful. I'm gonna live my own truth. I hate saying these things like but I'm gonna live and do kind of what I want. And I believed if you build it, they will come. Like so many things I told myself, like I give myself goals every year to talk about or to do. Like I think 2020 was like accountability. Sorry. Um Oh yeah, 2021 was like don't post low hanging fruit. So that's why I was posting a lot of weird things because it's like don't do things very that you know are going to get likes. Just post weird stuff. And since 2022 was like rough for me, I knew it was going to be crazy. I was like be relentless. Like just go out there at a wedding and give it your all. And then yeah.
So it sounds like through that process, you really got to figure out your strengths, what you loved, really distill down into like what makes you you. And then you started to share that and it paid off. Like, and your friends and others noticed a shift in your confidence, which affected your creativity. And then this momentum started to build How did it
I
affect other areas of your life?
like I found out like I have due to just the way I was a latchkey kid essentially. So I pretty much did things to like go under the radar. Don't draw too much attention to you. Just be a people pleaser. Like just be okay being out there, which is awful for being unique and an individual, right? As you want to just hide under the radar. And so once I started talking to my therapist about like my communication issues with my parents, with my family, I got to actually figure out what I actually wanted as an individual through journaling and talking to my therapist. And seeing what I actually want as a person really just made me very happy. And like want to I don't want to do I don't have to do the things I don't want to at a wedding. And that sounds weird, but like as long as my clients know what they're getting, and I always show full galleries, like having that trust built up for me and trusting myself at a wedding and trusting like, oh, they're not going to care if I don't get all the centerpieces at this way. Like, not like I would, but like I try to get as much as possible. But like, it's okay. These things, like, sorry, I realized what I want at weddings. And I think through my confidence through therapy and realizing like what I actually generally want at weddings is human connection and those moments. Like a huge inspiration for my current work is looking through Brittany's family photos, like seeing all these photos from the mid-century, the 1950s, 60s, and seeing how present people were through the day. Like it really inspired me. And I think to me, breaking down that barrier between at a wedding not feeling like the help and feeling kind of like a guest at a wedding, really just immersing myself really helped me separate myself from my old self. Because like old me, people pleasing me would be like, cool, get what the clients want, get things that you know the planners will want and the vendors and the flower people. And I'm like, now I'm just like, I'm shooting for me, which is mostly these human interactions, these little connections, these weird little snippets at weddings. Like I'm shooting that for me. And I know that my clients appreciate and love those things because they love their friends. Like every time I get to a consult, they're like, hey, we don't want attention on us. We love the way you shoot our guests and people at our weddings. This is what we want. It goes back to if you build it, they will come kind of mantra.
Mm.
And so like having that confidence in myself that like this is what I want. This is what the beauty I find at weddings is this. Display it, having the confidence to display it and to do it. Because like when I go to a wedding, I shoot with like a 35 and a 50. Those are like my primo lenses. So I have to get pretty close. And I'm just having the confidence to be like, cool, I can go in, grab a photo, come back. Or I don't shoot like that. I'm like holding down the button, clicking photos and coming back. But it having that confidence in itself really helped. And I think I noticing, I will stop rambling, but I noticed like a lot of my clients at 2021 were like, you have such a calming presence. We didn't even really notice you there. Like, I am not stressed at a wedding because I worked a restaurant line. Like, things get so intense on a weekend shift. You got tickets kind of just all over the place. And the only thing you can do is just maintain focus and just hope you get through it. Because worrying about these tickets is not going to make things better, right? Worrying about your timeline on a wedding day, things are running behind. You kind of have to accept it. You can try your best to get it on time, but like just embrace it in a way. So I think just feeling confident in myself, in my own abilities, and knowing what I wanted as a photographer really translated through my work and through the clientele I kind of get.
I
I
love
hope
that,
that
Sam.
helps.
100%. I love that. When you know yourself and you know your vision and you know like what you're about as a creative and what clients love and you have that clarity. And when you have that clarity in your work and you're at a wedding, you can then you see those moments and you can shoot those moments. And yeah, I really love that, Sam. Has this made you more playful? Do you experiment more? You mentioned the other day, like you shoot mirrorless now.
Yeah.
And how has that changed your photography?
So yeah, I think to me, I switched systems. I was shooting Nikon. I'd shot Nikon for about 10 years, 10, 11 years. And I switched over to Canon because I know my wife would never switch camera systems because she's a creature of habit. So I switched over, let alone it's kind of funny that she got out of the industry. So I switched over for no reason, quote unquote. But like switching over to Canon was like it made me fall in love and have to learn photography again, which is like so cool. I felt like I was in such a better space as a human. Like I love my 30s. I feel like I was a stupid idiot in my 20s. So to like have this knowledge and like confidence and sure-footedness about myself in my 30s, fantastic. Wouldn't change it. So switching to mirrorless, I think like being able to see exposures in the viewfinder helps immensely. I love custom functions on Canon because I'm like, cool, I have my flash setting, which I know when I attach my flash to it, my settings are perfect. I have my slow shutter speed, and then I shoot manual for most of the day. So seeing my exposure gives me more bandwidth to see the composition in frames. Like that's one less barrier to entry, and it's kind of dangerous because when you see your viewfinder, you're not sometimes. I'm very reactive, so I'm like, cool, this is underexposed. I'm just going to turn the dial, and I'm like, I'm shooting at 1/40th of a second. That was awful. So I have to be careful about the settings, but like having the bandwidth of not worrying about that as much, I can focus more on composition. And honestly, I'm just scanning a wedding like a Terminator. I'm scanning guests to see these little moments happen. Like at Sunday's wedding, I saw a caterer carrying a tray full of cakes over, and I'm like, cool. She has to go through the dance floor. I love kind of this meta-ness of like blending people working the wedding with people guests at the wedding, and so I was like, cool. I'm just gonna take a few stills right there, and you look at the guests as the cake is passing and they're like, ooh, desserts here. Like everyone's going, oh. And I had no idea people's expressions would be like that. But I'm like, hey, let's just take data's cheap. I'm gonna be here anyway. If I don't like this photo, I can delete it later or not use it. But I'm just gonna take it. Like, and it's just one of my favorite photos. And so I'm just having just fun getting these interactions and these little subtle moments at weddings. Like I love my favorite kind of artwork is always stuff that is subversive. So like it's like I want to emulate or do those things in a way.
That's awesome, Sam. Beautiful. I love that. So there's a question in the chat from Sheena. He mentioned, you discuss journaling, you have these 1 year, 2 year, 5 year goals. What are your goals looking into the future? Can you give us a bit of an
Oh,
insight into that?
oh, this is so tough, Sheena, because like my wife's in grad school. She's getting a residency next January to June. We don't know where that's at. She got into grad school a little late. We had to like switch her lives in a month from Canmore to Toronto. It is very hard to figure out where I'm going to be in the next 5 years due to her schooling, but I really hope that two things. I hope I don't want to talk about my wife too much because I don't want to put her on the spotlight too much, but I hope her path, I will be so supportive of whatever path she continues to go on because she A deserves it, like with her life. And that is what a partnership's for in general, is making sure that the person that you love or that you support gets what they need. And seeing her in photography preservation is seeing a side of her that I never knew, I won't say existed, but like there's just such joy in seeing her learn knowledge. My wife is a complete freaking nerd and I love it. She loves learning about the history of photos and art in black and whites and this whole process. And so I love this joy that's bringing her. So I'm, with that said, I'm trying to transition a lot of my work to the Northeast or destination stuff, at least half. And I really do love my community in Austin and the market here in Austin. And I love how wild people get on the dance floor in Austin. So I want to split my time 50% here and 50% at least in the Northeast and destination. Obviously figure out where she gets hired for school at post school and goes to school. So
Mm.
those are my goals, and maybe eventually buy a house at some point. We'll see.
Nice. Awesome, Sam. And what would you say the focus is in a more like immediate future? So what does the rest of this year look like? What is something that you're excited for and inspired for in 2023?
Um, the rest of this year is looking fairly good. So the way my brain works is like I can keep taking weddings as much as I want. I'm young and healthy and I can still do these things. But last year, man, I was teetering on, I felt like the edge of burnout. Like I felt like when you get so overworked at weddings, it really does show. Like I think my strength at weddings is talking to people and getting people to have their guard down. And so I don't know if I let my ego get to me or something, but like when things don't work out the way that I wanted or would, or I was exhausted, I'd get like a little short or a little snappy, or my mindset wouldn't be as, I don't say pure, but like as good of a head on my head. Or like my thought process wasn't as good, and it shows, I think, in my work. I could see myself being a little exhausted or haggard or less whimsical or having fun. So I actually set a boundary on booking weddings this year at cutting it off at a number. So I look forward to actually having a hard no this year, which is, I would say, tremendous growth in me as a person who has boundary issues. So I'm looking forward to that, which would hopefully trickle down into me getting actually more sleep. So that is a goal for this year, as well as actually improving the quality of sleep, because that has gone awful and I need to work on that. Because do you have an Aura ring?
I
Are
do.
you wearing one of those?
I
What?
do.
Yeah, I saw that the other day. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, sure, 100%. As it relates to sleep specifically,
Yeah.
or
Yes.
yeah,
And
cool.
just everything about it, if you don't mind.
Yeah, totally. So I got the Aura Ring maybe 2, 3 years ago now. And it was mostly because I wanted to track my sleep and to understand my sleep a lot better, because I was sleeping and then waking up and feeling tired and exhausted. And I'd heard about this ring. So I basically wear it 24 hours a day, except for when I'm working out. But it gave me an insight into my sleeping patterns, how quickly I fell asleep, how much deep sleep I got, how much light sleep I got, REM, all of that was available in terms of the insights. I got to understand my heartbeat, my resting heart. I was able to see what my body temperature was at any given moment. And right at the beginning, I was just observing it to see what were the statistics and what did that mean without drawing too many conclusions. I wanted to
Yeah.
first see what the patterns were, but now it really helps me like know if I'm about to get sick because my temperature is rising or my resting heart rate is increasing. You have a daily score of like your readiness. You have a sleep score on a daily basis as well, and I can start seeing trends or patterns when, obvious things like if you're not getting enough sleep or and you're being very active. I can see like there's certain trends and patterns that are happening that aren't serving me, and so now I'm just way more conscious and aware as to how my sleep is, and I feel like that's the main one that I do look at. And as a result, if I'm not sleeping well, then I'll make those decisions again, like you mentioned, creating boundaries and saying no to that evening, out with friends, because I
Yeah.
want to look after my state of being and my health, and then I know that in the longer term it's gonna pay off for me. But it's been great, and I highly recommend it to anyone if they're looking to understand their system and their body and connect with that in a greater way. And if you're very science based, you're gonna love it, because I had a lot of resistance into getting one of these because I didn't want to necessarily track everything and see all the numbers and
Totally.
see all the stats. I wanted to have that own, I wanted to build that own, my own self-awareness
Yeah.
around those things. But sometimes you'll lie to yourself and you won't want to know the truth, and you will ignore signs. And I know this has been true for me, and I'm sure others can relate to this, but you will convince yourself that you are okay and you can go out on that evening with friends, even though you feel a bit run down, etc., etc. Whereas this will tell you how things are as it is in relation to how you have been. And then it's up to you whether you want to go with the suggestions, because it will give you prompts and suggestions as well throughout your days. Like if I haven't been moving enough, it will ask me to
Yeah.
start getting a bit more active. And you've been sitting at your desk too much, or maybe stretch your legs, things like that. So yeah, again, it's just like high level view, but it's really great, and I highly recommend it if sleep is something that one wants to improve for themselves, because it's, as it relates to mental health, it's helped me a lot in that space.
That you sold me. Sleep is something I really actually do want to work on. And I know that sounds like a really ridiculous sentence in nowadays, but like the quality of sleep affects everything that you do, right?
Mm,
So
100%. So Sam, I wanted to, we have many people here in the room, and maybe they're considering seeking out therapy or doing something to improve their mental health. And as I mentioned at the start of this, we're both not professionals in that space, but we are experiencing what's worked for us.
yeah,
So for those who may be interested in that, what do you feel like has really worked for you, and what would your advice or your suggestion be for them?
I it sounds so cliche, but you have to really want that change in your life. Like things aren't going to just happen to you because you go get the help. I think even just going to the therapy, I was like, I don't know why I'm here, but it took me a little while to be like, no, I really do want this change and this accountability in my life. So before I would say you seek therapy, or hey, you should really want it for you. You shouldn't want therapy because your partner told you, or you want to change for your partner. You have to want to change for yourself. And like it's the same thing happened even in a way. I didn't mean to lose weight, but like it just happened, and I had tried before that, but I think I just was lying to myself about the things. Like I really wasn't in it to like make that progress. And for you to actually make that change, you have to be committed yourself to wanting it and doing anything that you can. Maybe it's not even change, just acceptance of it, right?
Mm.
Because like everything in therapy isn't about changing yourself to be a better person. It is actually learning to accept yourself for faults and all, right? And just yeah.
Love that. Thanks for sharing that, Sam. So I wanted to end this conversation with a few quick fire questions. So, we had Hugh Whitaker as a guest a few weeks ago, and I think I know the answer to this. And he's actually one of the reasons why we reconnected, because we've known each other for many years. Like from
Yeah.
community is so important, and also one of the keys to mental health as well, I believe, is to have support and be around like-minded individuals. So he has been a friend in the industry, as have you, and I thank you for that. He mentioned a book that I know is close to your heart as well, and I think I can see it in in the view there. What is your favorite photography book, and is that one of them?
Um, I would say this Larry Fink on composition and improvisation is pretty like this book did change my life in 2021. I remember reading it in the fall of 2021, and like the words actually making a lot more sense to me. Like I don't know how to explain it. I was just probably in a better headspace of confidence, but like that is a huge influence on the way I shoot my flash, the way I compose, the like messiness I embrace is due to that book. And honestly, I love his like final lines of the book is just like live your life. And I think that's the thing I like really picked up this year was like he's like, I work as a farmer on a farm, and like it's not all about photography. Like experienced life is so important, and it really is. So that book I think has just had a profound uh, impact on my life in
So,
photography.
nice one, Sam. Any favorite movies that have
Uh,
inspired you and you recommend?
I love Portrait of a Lady on Fire. I think that movie is just gorgeous to look at. I love the story. I love the music at that pivotal scene, and obviously Vivaldi's in it as well. And I love Vivaldi. And I think we watched a documentary this past weekend, which was Nan Goldin's All the Beauty and Bloodshed. And I had been familiar with Nan's work for years, but like to see it in context and to see her, it's a memoir piece on her, and to like experience her life, it's gorgeous. Her work and her activism is so profound, and she's just like a stellar human. So I highly recommend watching that documentary just in general, but especially if you love photography.
Nice one, Sam. What's your favorite app or tool as a photographer?
Oh my gosh. I'm so boring in that regard because I like my pedometer step counter thing at a wedding. That is like my thing I love at weddings now, is just to see how many steps I take at a wedding. So like Apple Fitness, or I use a Garmin watch. So as a Connect. So I'm boring. That doesn't help me, I'd say, throughout the day. The only thing that I use, actually, I'm very present during a wedding. I don't take behind the scenes. And I think for me, that works for me because I want to immerse myself on the wedding day. So I pretty much put my phone down, other than having a shot list for family formals, and so I can cross stuff off. But I am pretty present other than that.
Nice. Yeah, I like it. Just curious, what is like a record for you in terms of number of steps on a wedding day?
I think 25,000 or
Wow.
something. Yeah.
Nice. I remember hitting like 19,000. That's the number that comes into my head. So you're doing a lot, you're doing a lot of steps. Wow, amazing. Um, all right. And yeah, who would you say is like one of your favorite photographers or the photographers in the industry and maybe outside the industry that inspire you?
So I try to keep my head out of the wedding industry as much as possible, because I feel like that was just bad for my headspace.
Hmm.
But like obviously my wife, Brittany Esther, influences me, and she probably hates that I said that. But she got me on to like Naomi Goggins. I love her, like her work is just so ethereal and just so present. And obviously Dos Mas and Las Mesa, they do fantastic work. And I love people that when you see an image, you know it's them. I love that their editing and their style, you're just like, you know whose image it's going to be on your timeline. Like people are, that confidence in themselves and having fun with it, I just love. Outside the industry, obviously Larry Fink. I discovered, I don't know why, I don't know how this happened. I forgot. I don't know if it was through Brittany, but since she's going to school, I've made it a habit to like just check out books at at our library, and she's has a huge, extensive photography collection. And so I don't know if I picked up the Lizette Modell book, or she was like, "Hey, you should check this out." But like Lizette Modell is such a phenomenal photographer. Like it's kind of funny. She was a teacher of Larry Fink, which I had no idea, and
Wow.
she actually taught Diane Arbus before she passed. So Lizette Modell, I owe like her backstory and life, and like even just being blacklisted, like it's during the 1950s during McCarthyism. It's like just phenomenal. And I think just learning the history about photography and where it came from and how new of an art it is really inspires me. And last person. Sorry, I won't go too long. I picked up this random book too, also at the library, and then I had to go buy it. Hiroji Kubota. He is the shit. Like I never knew existed. I just like bought this book. I just picked up this book because I love the cover. He This book is so great because it is an interview with him, and he's so humble, and he just like fell into it, man. And his artwork is just beautiful. So he's just a new personal favorite. And obviously, and Nan Golden, like her work is so immersive because she was part of that community. And I think that just like really inspires me, that immersion into it. Because to me, what's really important is just breaking down that wall between being a photographer and being kind of a guest at a wedding or getting the point of view of a guest at a wedding. So like Nan just is phenomenal at just breaking down that wall.
Amazing, Sam. I love that Hiroji book. I've got that up.
Oh
It's in
my
front of me on
God.
the shelf as well. Was gifted it by Nisha Ravji. Thank you, Nisha,
Oh
for
my
that amazing
gosh.
book. But I agree, it's so key, and he's been everywhere and been in so many key moments in, like I would say, like even in American
Oh,
history and
oh
things like that.
yes.
Like, wow.
Let me just go to Martin Luther King's I have a dream speech or what.
Yeah.
Like, let me just be there. I'm like, what? And like the fall Saigon, he was there. Like my dad was there,
Wow.
obviously at a different reason, but like, yeah, he was just there, like for that. It's just wild.
Unbelievable. Yeah, unbelievable. Um, Sam, thank you so much for being so open, so honest, vulnerable today. I really appreciate it, man. My key takeaways are, to really be yourself, to love yourself, and then put that out there in the world and watch it come back to you. And I feel like you're living that right now, and in the process of continuing to do that. Thank you so much for sharing everything you did today. Thank you everyone for being here and for your questions as well, as we have been connected. Any final words, Sam?
If you're not gonna love yourself, how are you gonna love anybody? I don't just be yourself. Go to therapy if you need it. It really trickles out in the rest of your life, like your other aspects of your life that you never thought you would have. I am way more honest with my partner, with my friends, and we only got one life to live. Why live being someone else? If you need to reach out to me, social media, I will respond to any questions that you have. Thanks for having me, Sachin.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate it.